in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. There is a peculiar moment in intellectual history that never stops being fascinating. In 1905, a 26-year-old patent clerk in Bern, Switzerland, wrote a paper that shattered one of humanity's oldest assumptions. Albert Einstein proved that time is not what we think it is. It does not tick uniformly across the universe like some great cosmic clock. It bends, it stretches, it accelerates and decelerates depending on how fast you are moving and how close you are to a massive object. Time, Einstein showed, is relative. It is personal. Two people can experience the same event, and if they are in different gravitational environments or moving at different speeds, they will age at different rates, live different durations, and measure time in fundamentally incompatible ways. This was perhaps the most radical scientific announcement in the history of human knowledge. And yet, 14 centuries before Einstein was born, a book revealed in the deserts of Arabia had already said something extraordinarily similar. Throughout its 114 chapters are a series of statements about the physical world that have arrested the attention of scientists, philosophers, and scholars for generations. Statements about the origin of the universe, the behavior of celestial bodies, the nature of time, the expansion of space, and the scale of cosmic distances. Statements that sound, to the modern ears, an astrophysics lecture. Time occupies a particularly central position in this worldview. Before we can understand what the Qur'an says about time, we need to briefly understand what time actually is, because our intuitive understanding of it is almost certainly wrong. For most of human history, people assumed that time was a constant. A second is a second. An hour is an hour. This was so obvious, so experientially self-evident, that no one seriously questioned it. Newton formalized this assumption in his Principia Mathematica in 1687. Time, in Newton's universe, was God's metronome. It ticked the same for everyone, everywhere. Then Einstein came along and proved this was completely false. His special theory of relativity demonstrated that time is not absolute. It is relative to the observer's velocity. This concept is called kinematic time dilation. The faster you move, the slower time passes for you compared to someone who is stationary. It has been measured. It has been confirmed in laboratories. It operates in every GPS satellite circling the Earth right now. But Einstein's insight went even deeper than velocity. His general theory of relativity, published in 1915, showed that gravity also warps time. The more massive an object, the more it distorts the fabric of space-time around it, and the more slowly time passes near it. Stand on the surface of a neutron star, an object with a mass greater than our sun compressed into a sphere roughly 20 kilometers across, and time would pass measurably more slowly for you than for someone floating in deep space. Near the event horizon of a black hole, this effect becomes extreme. An observer watching someone fall into a black hole would see that person appear to slow down and freeze at the horizon, never quite crossing it, because the gravitational time dilation is so severe. Time, from the outside observer's perspective, appears to stop for the falling person. This is the scientific context we need to hold in our minds as we open the Qur'an. Because when the Qur'an speaks of divine days measured in thousands of human years, of angels ascending through cosmic distances in a fraction of the time it would take us, of creation unfolding across timescales that dwarf human comprehension, it is describing a universe in which time behaves exactly the way Einstein said it behaves. There are 3 verses in the Qur'an that form the core of any serious discussion about Quranic time relativity. They are separated by chapters, revealed in different contexts, and speak of different things, and yet together they paint a picture of time that is startlingly consistent with relativistic physics. The first and most famous of these is Surah As-Sajda, chapter 32, verse 5. He regulates all affairs from the heavens to the earth. Then all affairs ascend to him in a day whose measure is 1,000 years of what you count. Let us sit with this verse for a moment. It describes 2 things happening simultaneously: affairs descending from heaven to earth, and then ascending back to God. And the duration of this cosmic round trip from the heavens to the earth and back is described as one divine day, which is then compared to 1,000 years of human reckoning. On one level, classical scholars like Imam al-Tabari read this as a statement about the magnificence of God. One of God's days encompasses what takes humans a millennium. The verse speaks to the transcendence and otherness of the divine. He operates on a timescale that utterly dwarfs our own. But in 1990, an Egyptian scientist named Dr. Mansour Hassab El-Nabi published a calculation that took this verse in an entirely different direction. He observed that the verse describes cosmic affairs ascending a specific distance in a specific time. If you could calculate that distance and divide it by that time, you would have a velocity. Hassab El-Nabi's calculation works as follows. In classical Arabic astronomical reckoning, the moon was the standard unit for measuring great distances. The verse's 1,000 years corresponds to 12,000 lunar months. In one sidereal day, the time it takes the Earth to complete one rotation relative to the stars, 86,164.1 seconds, the moon travels a circumferential distance around the Earth. Multiply that distance by 12,000 and divide by the number of seconds in a sidereal day, and the result is approximately 299,792 kilometers per second. The speed of light accurate to 5 significant figures. This Quranic ratio, when applied to celestial mechanics, points toward a fundamental constant of the universe, the speed of light, as the boundary between different temporal experiences. The second verse comes from Surah Al-Hajj, chapter 22, verse 47. And they urge you to hasten the punishment, but Allah will never fail in His promise. And indeed, a day with your Lord is like 1,000 years of those which you count. Where Surah As-Sajdah speaks of cosmic activity, ascending and descending, this verse makes a direct, stark comparison between divine time and human time. The phrase "with your Lord" is critical here. It establishes a specific frame of reference, the divine realm, contrasted with the human frame of reference. Classical Mufassirun, exegetes, such as Ibn Kathir, noted that this verse served two purposes. First, to illustrate the patience of Allah regarding the punishment of the wicked, and second, to highlight the vastness of the afterlife compared to the ephemeral nature of worldly life. However, from a cosmological perspective, the verse defines a ratio, 1 day to 1,000 years of lunar counting. If we view the divine realm or the throne, Arsh, as a region of immense cosmic weight or a higher dimensional state, the relativity of time becomes a physical necessity. If an entity exists in a state of high energy or near a source of immense gravitational potential, the time dilation described in this verse aligns precisely with the behavior of time in extreme relativistic environments. But the most extraordinary of the three verses is the third. It comes from Surah Al-Ma'arij, chapter 70, verse 4. The angels and the Spirit ascend to Him during a day the measure of which is 50,000 years. Now we have a problem, and it is a beautiful one. Two verses of the Quran give different values for a divine day. In chapter 32, one divine day equals 1,000 human years. In chapter 70, one divine day equals 50,000 human years. To a superficial reading, this looks like a contradiction, and critics of the Quran have occasionally pointed to it as such. But to anyone familiar with Einstein's general relativity, this is not a contradiction. It is precisely what you would expect from a universe in which time is not absolute. The two verses are describing the same journey, angels ascending to God, from different reference frames or in different gravitational contexts. An observer near an extreme gravitational source, the event horizon of a supermassive black hole, for instance, or the gravitational field of the divine throne, would experience time passing at a radically different rate than an observer in open space. The ratio of Surah As-Sajdah and the ratio of Surah Al-Ma'arij are not contradictions but data points, different temporal readings from different cosmic vantage points. They are, in relativistic terms, the expected output of two clocks in different gravitational wells. If we see the ratio of Surah Al-Ma'arij in the context of relativity, such a massive discrepancy in time flow occurs only in two scenarios. Extreme velocity. The traveler moves within a fraction of a trillionth of the speed of light. Or extreme gravity. A position very close to the event horizon of a supermassive black hole or within a region of immense space-time curvature. Islamic tradition describes angels as beings created from nur, light. In modern physics, photons, light particles, do not experience time. From the perspective of a photon traveling at the speed of light, time is essentially frozen. The Quranic description of angels ascending over a period that equates to 50,000 years suggests they operate in a realm where the velocity is so high or the space is so distorted that the temporal passage on earth becomes nearly irrelevant. The spirit, al-Ruh, often interpreted as Gabriel or a unique divine entity, is mentioned separately, indicating perhaps a higher tier of existence or a different mode of ascent. The jump from 1,000 years to 50,000 years illustrates that time is not just relative, but multi-layered. There are different heights or dimensions in the cosmos, each with its own temporal signature. The concept of ascent, ma'arij means ways of ascent or stairways, is vital to understanding the relationship between distance and time in the Quran. The title of Surah 70, al-Ma'arij, refers to the levels of the heavens. In relativistic terms, as one moves up away from a gravitational source, like the Earth, or through different layers of the cosmic hierarchy, the temporal frame changes. If we consider the throne, Arsh, as the outermost boundary of the universe, the gravitational and spatial distance between the terrestrial realm and the divine boundary would necessitate the exact kind of time dilation the Quran describes. The affairs and angels act as messengers between these frames. When they ascend, they are essentially crossing boundaries of space-time curvature. Dr. Basil Altay, a specialist in quantum cosmology, argues for a more integrated approach. He suggests that the Quranic verses on time relativity are not merely metaphors for long durations, but are descriptions of the actual physical structure of the universe. According to this view, time is not a continuous line, but a series of instants created by Allah. This quantum time means that the universe is being recreated at every moment. If the recreation occurs at different rates in different parts of the cosmos, due to varying gravitational or velocity potentials, then time dilation is a natural consequence of divine will manifesting through physical law. Altay argues that the Quranic ratios, 1,000 and 50,000 years, are indicative of the quantized and relative nature of the universe's fabric. The Quran, in these 3 verses, is describing a universe where time runs differently in different places, exactly as Einstein described. The history of classical physics was defined by the principle of locality. It was believed that objects could only be influenced by their immediate surroundings, and that physical processes required a medium or a direct force to transmit influence across space. In this billiard ball universe, everything was discrete, isolated, and separated by the void of distance. Space was the barrier that kept things apart. However, the advent of quantum mechanics in the early 20th century dismantled this perception of reality. It introduced a universe that is fundamentally interconnected at a level that transcends the limitations of space and time. When 2 subatomic particles, such as electrons or photons, interact in a specific way, they become entangled. This means their physical properties, such as spin, position, or momentum, become linked. According to the laws of quantum physics, even if these particles are separated by billions of light years, a measurement performed on one particle instantaneously determines the state of the other. This occurs without any signal being sent between them. Because no signal can travel faster than light, this instantaneous correlation suggests that at a fundamental level, the 2 particles are still part of a single system. This is known as non-locality. It implies that the distance we perceive in the macroscopic world is, in some sense, an illusion or a secondary property. At the quantum level, the universe remains a single, undivided whole. This is the scientific context we need to hold in our minds as we open the Quran. The Quran speaks of a comprehensive system of information that accounts for every occurrence in the cosmos, and it comes from Surah Al-An'am, verse 59. And with him are the keys of the unseen, none knows them except him. And he knows what is on the land and in the sea. Not a leaf falls but that he knows it. And no grain is there within the darknesses of the earth, and no moist or dry thing, but that it is written in a clear record. In classical thought, the idea that every leaf falling is known and recorded is often viewed purely as a metaphor for God's power. However, through the lens of quantum information theory and entanglement, we see a universe where every interaction leaves an indelible trace. In quantum physics, the state of a system contains its entire history. If the universe is an entangled system, then the state of any single part, a grain in the darkness of the earth, is intrinsically linked to the state of the whole. The verse refers to a Kitab al Mubeen, a clear record or manifest book. In contemporary scientific discourse, this can be compared to the quantum wave function of the universe, a mathematical description that encompasses all possible states and information of every particle in existence. The Quranic record implies that information is the most fundamental substrate of reality. Before there is matter or energy, there is the record, information. One of the most profound statements regarding the nature of distance and the divine comes from Surah Qaf, verse 16. And we have already created man, and know what his soul whispers to him, and we are closer to him than his jugular vein. The jugular vein is the primary conduit of life-sustaining blood to the brain. For the Quran to state that the Creator is closer than this vital internal structure challenges our understanding of spatial geometry. In a local Newtonian universe, closer implies a physical measurement of distance. However, in a non-local quantum framework, closeness is redefined. If we view the divine as the source of the unified fabric, or the field from which all particles emerge, then the relationship is not one of beside or near, but one of ontological immediacy. Just as the state of one entangled particle is present within its partner regardless of distance, the divine presence is present within the very fabric of the human being. The verse also mentions that God knows what his soul whispers to him. This points to a level of monitoring that is internal and instantaneous. In quantum mechanics, the observer effect demonstrates that the act of observation changes the state of a system. If the Creator is closer than the jugular vein, the divine observation is what sustains the collapse of the wave function into a stable reality at every moment. The Quran introduces the concept of al-Lawh al-Mahfuz, the preserved tablet, in Surah al-Buruj. This is described as the ultimate repository of all that has been and will be. Modern physics has proposed the holographic principle, which suggests that the entire three-dimensional universe can be described as information encoded on a distant two-dimensional boundary. Essentially, the reality we experience is a projection of a more fundamental record. The al-Lawh al-Mahfuz functions in Islamic theology as this fundamental record. If the universe is holographic, then the tablet is the boundary, and our physical existence is the manifestation of what is written upon it. This aligns with the Quranic view that the physical world, al-Shahada, is secondary to the unseen world of information and command. The term preserved, Mahfuz, implies that this information is immune to corruption, decay, or loss. In quantum terms, this mirrors the unitary evolution of the wave function, which ensures that the sum of probabilities always remains constant and that the history of the universe is never lost. Even when a system seems to undergo entropy or disorder, the underlying information remains intact in the record. Islamic theology is built upon the distinction between al-Ghaib, the unseen, and al-Shahada, the witnessed. Classical scholars often interpreted al-Ghaib purely as the metaphysical realm, angels, jinn, heaven. However, modern physics shows us that the witnessed world is actually governed by the unseen laws of quantum mechanics. Quantum entanglement shows that the diversity of the physical world is an emergent property of an underlying unity. Two particles may appear to be two separate entities in the witnessed world, but in the unseen, quantum state, they are one. While quantum mechanics appears random or probabilistic to human observers, Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, the Quran asserts that everything is in a clear record. This suggests that what we perceive as quantum randomness is, from the divine perspective, a highly ordered and written decree. The record is the absolute certainty that underlies our perceived uncertainty. The alignment between quantum entanglement and the Quranic unified record offers a vision of a universe that is fundamentally interconnected, where distance is not a barrier to relationship or influence, and informatically saturated, where every event is recorded in a fundamental substrate, al-Lawh al-Mahfuz. In 1927, a Belgian Catholic priest and physicist named Georges Lemaire proposed something that struck his contemporaries as almost comically audacious. He suggested that the universe was not eternal. It had not always existed in its current form. If the galaxies were currently moving apart, as observations of redshifted starlight suggested, then reversing that motion back through time would lead to a point where everything in the observable universe was compressed into a single, infinitely dense point, a primordial atom, he called it. The universe, he argued, began in a moment of explosive creation. Albert Einstein, initially skeptical, called Lemaitre's idea abominable. The steady-state universe, eternal, unchanging, without beginning or end, was a more philosophically comfortable model for many scientists. The idea of a beginning raised uncomfortable questions about what or who initiated it. When Edwin Hubble's 1929 observations confirmed the recession of galaxies, and when the cosmic microwave background radiation, the thermal afterglow of the universe's earliest moments, was accidentally discovered by Penzias and Wilson in 1965, the Big Bang became scientific consensus. The universe began. It had a first moment. Everything that exists emerged from a state of unimaginable density and heat approximately 13.8 billion years ago. Now consider Surah Al-Anbiya, chapter 21, verse 30, revealed in 7th century Arabia. Do those who disbelieve not see that the heavens and the earth were a joined entity, and we separated them? The Arabic word ratqan is crucial here. It does not merely mean together in a loose, general sense. Ratku specifically means something that is sewn, stitched, or sealed shut, a unified, impenetrable mass. The verse is describing the heavens and the earth as having been, at some prior point, a single closed, unified entity before being separated, fataka, torn apart, burst open. When Dr. Alfred Kroner, one of the world's leading geologists and a professor at the University of Mainz, was presented with this verse, he was unambiguous in his response. He stated that a person who had no access to modern scientific knowledge could not, in the 7th century, have described the origins of the universe in terms so precisely consistent with what we now know. The heavens and the earth being a joined entity before separation is a description of the Big Bang singularity, a point where all matter and energy existed in a unified state before the explosive expansion that created the observable universe. The Qur'an does not merely say the universe was created, it says it was once sealed shut and then burst open. That is the Big Bang in 11 Arabic words. This is not an isolated verse. Turn to Surah Ad-Dariyat, chapter 51, verse 47, and you find the companion statement, "What happened after the initial separation? And the heaven we constructed with strength, and indeed, we are its expander." The Arabic word la musi'un comes from the root wasiya, meaning to expand or to make wide. What makes this grammatically extraordinary is its tense and form. La musi'un is not past tense. It is not saying, we expanded it. It is present continuous. We are expanding it. The verse does not merely describe an act of creation that happened and concluded. It describes an ongoing, continuous process of expansion that is still happening now. Edwin Hubble confirmed in 1929 that the universe is expanding, that galaxies are accelerating away from each other. In 1998, astronomers discovered that this expansion is not merely continuing, but accelerating, driven by a mysterious force they named dark energy. The universe is getting bigger, faster. It is being expanded. The Qur'an, in present continuous tense, says exactly this, not, we expanded the heaven. We are expanding it, right now, continuously. Then there is Surah Fusilat, chapter 41, verse 11, which pulls back to the moment just after creation. Then he directed himself to the heaven while it was smoke, dukan. Modern cosmology describes the early universe, for the first few 100,000 years after the Big Bang, as a hot, dense, opaque plasma of subatomic particles. Atoms could not yet form because the temperature was too high for electrons to bind to nuclei. The universe was, effectively, a thick, hot, luminous fog. Not transparent, not clear. A kind of cosmic smoke. The Quran calls it dukan, smoke. This primordial state came to an end approximately 380,000 years after the Big Bang, when the universe cooled enough for atoms to form, allowing light to travel freely for the first time. That released light, frozen in time as it has stretched across the expanding universe, is what we detect today as the cosmic microwave background radiation. It is the echo of the moment the cosmic smoke cleared. 3 verses. 3 scientific facts confirmed only in the 20th century. The Big Bang singularity, the continuous expansion of the universe, and the primordial plasma state. all three stated in a book compiled in 7th century Arabia. Beautiful indeed. One of the most striking hadiths in the entire Islamic corpus on the subject of cosmic scale is not a calculation or a verse. It is an image, a single vivid image that conveys something that even the most advanced computer simulations struggle to communicate: the sheer, incomprehensible vastness of creation. The 7 heavens, compared to the Kursi, footstool of God, are nothing but like a ring thrown into a vast desert, and the Kursi compared to the throne is likewise. Let us sit with the scale this hadith is describing. The 7 heavens, which encompass at minimum the entire observable universe. The observable universe has a diameter of approximately 93 billion light years. A single light year is roughly 9.46 trillion kilometers. The observable universe contains an estimated 2 trillion galaxies, each containing hundreds of billions of stars. Our own galaxy, the Milky Way, is so large that if you shrank the sun to the size of a grain of sand, the Milky Way would still be wider than a continent. The hadith says that all of this, all 93 billion light years, all 2 trillion galaxies, is like a ring thrown into a vast desert when compared to the Kursi, the footstool of God. Not a small ring in a small desert. A ring, any ring, in a vast, endless desert. An object so small relative to its environment that it cannot be found, cannot be seen, might as well not exist at all. And then the hadith goes further. The Kursi itself, relative to the throne, is like that same ring in that same desert. The throne of God is to the Kursi what the Kursi is to the entire universe. We are now describing a scale so vast that mathematics struggles to express it. The observable universe is to the throne what a subatomic particle is to the observable universe, and then some. If the entire observable universe, 93 billion light years across, is like a ring lost in a desert, what must the throne be? This matters for our discussion of time because of general relativity's fundamental insight. Mass warps space-time. The greater the mass, the greater the curvature of space-time around it, and the more severely time is dilated near it. If the throne of God is of a scale that makes the universe appear as a ring in a desert, then the gravitational time dilation near such an object would be so extreme that a day near the throne might indeed correspond to thousands, or 50,000, or millions of years on Earth. The Quran's statements about divine time ratios, 1 day is to 1,000 years, 1 day 50,000 years, are not arbitrary numbers. They may be reflections of the gravitational time dilation produced by a structure of the scale the hadith describes. Surah Al-Mulk, chapter 67, verse 3 adds another layer. He who created 7 heavens in layers. The Arabic word tibakan means layered, stacked, or arranged in tiers. Later in Surah Fusilat, 41:12, the Quran specifies that only the lowest heaven is decorated with lamps, meaning visible stars. The other 6 heavens are beyond what we can see, beyond what our instruments can detect. To a modern theoretical physicist, this is a remarkably resonant description. String theory, the leading candidate for a unified theory of physics, requires the existence of 10 or 11 spatial dimensions, most of which are compactified or hidden from our perception. The inflationary multiverse model proposes that our observable universe is just one of countless bubble universes, each with potentially different physical laws, separated from each other by barriers we cannot cross or observe. The Quran's 7 heavens, only the lowest of which is visible to us, with each level having its own properties and commands, sounds less like ancient cosmology and more like a narrative description of a multidimensional or multi-layered universe, precisely the kind of structure that modern theoretical physics now seriously proposes. This is where I leave you. The examination of time, distance, and cosmic scale reveals a universe far more complex than classical models once suggested. As modern science begins to grasp the true nature of the cosmos, quantum physics has become the primary tool for deciphering its laws. Remarkably, the principles emerging from quantum mechanics today mirror the revelations provided in 7th century Arabia. The quantum Qur'an is the fitting designation for these verses, scripture that anticipated the fluid, interconnected reality of the universe over 14 centuries ago.